talk about Vision 2020. It was an ambitious quest to develop Ghana and to rival, if not to be better than Singapore. This is some 25 years ago. At that time of its inception, that dream seemed far off in the future. We have just begun our journey into 2020. So we ask, what happened to Vision 2020? In 1995, the NDC administration under President Jerry John Rawlings launched the Vision 2020 document that was put together by the National Development Planning Commission, that's the NDPC, as Ghana's blueprint for sustainable socio-economic development. My colleague, Emefa Apau, has been interacting with another colleague, Raymond Akwa. She first asked him what the much talked about Vision 2020 is all about.
So we're taking a look at the policy framework Vision 2020, and we are in the year 2020. We're assessing it to find out where we are with it. My colleague Raymond Akwa joins me in studio with details of all that we need to know about the Vision 2020 document. Raymond, let's start off with what Vision 2020 is all about.
So we called it a National Development Policy Framework. I.e., we set for ourselves that between the years 1996 to 2020, we're going to achieve a certain level of development. Basically, what we said we wanted was a balanced economy with a middle-income country status and standard of living. That by the year 2020, we would have reached the level of Singapore.
And that's what we're looking at?
For ourselves, yes.
Interesting, but you know a bit about Singapore, though, because this is what we're setting to. That's our target. What do we know about Singapore?
So we know that Singapore had actually created an open and liberal market economy. It was founded on competition, initiative, and creativity. They employed science and technology in deriving what they call the maximum productivity of their people. That is, in terms of health, social development, in terms of economic development, in terms of all the other facets of the living of the people, they had improved from what used to be a backwater, malaria-infested state to a progressive one, where the standards of living of the people had very much gone very high to the admiration of the entire world. We also knew that their lifespan had projected big time. So this was a state that nobody had hope in, yet within the period that they went through their development phase, they had actually advanced in ways that we wanted to copy them.
Well, we are in 2020, we would assess whether we are at that level, Singapore's level. But by 2020, though, what did we plan to achieve according to the document?
So we wanted a generation with a country, with the people who had long, healthy, and what you call a productive life for all individuals, and that we had access to enlarged sources and ranges for employment, for shelter, and also leisure. We also wanted to have the benefits of development being distributed across the state in a way that both the similarly poor and also the rich would benefit from the basic things that they needed. We also wanted to bridge the poverty gap between the rich and the poor. We wanted to at least reduce poverty to the barest minimum, so we'll have people having the basics of life and developing along the line. We wanted to reduce population growth from what was the present level at the time of about 3% to 2% every single year. This is because we know that as of the time that we're discussing that, our population was not growing as fast, or we needed to reduce it to levels that would be in tandem with the production in the economy. So one, social amenities are produced for a certain system, roads, schools, and all of that. You use population in doing the planning for these people. If your population is outgrowing your social amenities and the infrastructure, you always have pressure on this infrastructure. It destroys them, and people think that you've not done enough. So that's what we wanted to fix with that. And we wanted to provide solutions to our social, cultural, and economic problems together as a state, have the individual, the community, and the nation being at the center of it, and driving it all together.
Well, but how did we hope to achieve the targets that you've mentioned?
So we wanted to create a robust, diversified, and what was called a commercially based agricultural sector. We believe that at the point that we're speaking about how to go by Vision 2020, we're still largely doing the hunting and gathering kind of agric. We had not expanded, and agribusiness was not at the forefront of our engagements. We wanted the agri sector to be the basis of production. So the food products, instead of taking them to abroad or other places, would find a place in the industry by growing the manufacturing base, building factories that can convert them to product that will sell at rates that will get profit from it for the state, for individuals, and this will provide jobs for the people. This will also lead to transformation of cities and towns like mining did in some of the areas that we knew over the period of time. So basically, that's what we wanted to do, with the idea that when we do sustainable development, we will get to the point where people will be independent, people will be able to live beyond what was the 54 average lifespan for the Ghanaian at the time.
Okay. But well, like we were discussing before we had to talk, you were explaining to me that after this policy framework was put together, every government that has come along the line, because this was put together under the Rawlings regime, so every government that has come along the line have had to develop their own frameworks to fit into this vision. So tell us about what you know.
There's a long-term development framework, which was the Vision 2020. Each of the governments had their own plan as in a medium-term framework. Immediately we put together Vision 2020. The first 5 years was for what was called the Coordinated Program of Economic and Social Development Policies. This was for the first 5 years. And what was it supposed to do? It was to ensure human development, economic growth, rural development, urban development, and provide an enabling environment for development. First 5 years, accelerated growth, pushing up what was already done. And this was between 1996 and 2000.
Was it achieved?
Largely, we tried making giant strides in the areas. But when Kufuor came in, we moved from that medium-term framework to what we called the Growth and Poverty. First was Ghana Poverty Reduction Strategy 1, GPRS 1. Then we moved in the Kufuor second term to the Growth and Poverty Reduction Strategy, GPRS 2. When Kufuor was removed, the Mills administration also brought its own development plan. Virtually within the space, every government has sought to do a medium term to fit into the bigger brackets. One of the things we did very well at was the poverty reduction. The places we didn't do so well when it came to social development, health, for example, we also did not achieve so much when it comes to the other sanitation-related stuff. Water expansion and access, we did well. It's the quality that's always been a problem when it comes to the area of water development. The other places that we thought we had done was rural and urban development. Do you know that within the same space, when we transitioned into 2006 going to 2011, by 2012, we had a larger section of our population, more than 50%, living in urban areas compared to those who are living in the rural areas, which was not the case before that particular time. Indeed, between 1992 and 2006, we had halved poverty, which was within the MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals. It was to access to halve poverty within a period. By 2006, we had already cleared that. We have halved poverty from what used to be 51% of the population being poor to less than 27 or so being poor. And over the period, we are seeking to work at that. When we transition into our current system, we have tried to take each of the sectors and work on. What we've not been able to do properly is to put all together in achieving the collective goal. As of 2013, government was reporting that we're a middle-income lower country. Okay. As in the vision of 2020 being middle income, we have launched towards that direction by becoming a middle-income lower country. That had its own challenges when it comes to aid inflow, but also had prospects that all the things we have done in the years before had made us go in the direction that we're supposed to go. So in all, we have tried achieving some of these sectoral targets. Just that many believe that we are not where Singapore is today. That was the ultimate achievement. And we know that why we are not where Singapore is today.
Well, so overall, just before we wrap up, you've talked about us attaining the lower middle income status as a country. But by 2020 also, is there anything else that we should be looking back on? You've talked about halving poverty as well, and then becoming a lower middle income country. Any other significant thing?
We had become middle income lower. What we have not achieved, which has worsened over the period, is the poverty variation, or what we call the gap between the rich and the poor. So over the period, whilst we have reduced poverty largely, we have also increased the gap between the rich and the poor. We've not been able to do much in that direction. When it comes to actual delivery on sanitation, we've not done much on that. Environmental protection too, we've not really geared towards. So the health and sanitation areas, we've not done much, even with the MDGs, what they call attainment. We did so well with primary education. We did so well with improving education access. But the bigger question has been the quality of the education we are delivering. So we touch on various parts, except that we need to develop in a more coordinated way to achieve the goals that we ought to achieve going forward. And again, even though between 2008 to 2012, getting to 13, on the average, we're doing so well when it comes to GDP growth. We slumped from 2013 to 2016, falling below the average 8%. We have gotten back, if you check what's happening now. Between 2017 to 2019, we are still averaging 6, 7, and 8%. For us to get where we want to get to, we need average 10% of GDP, which we've not achieved so far. So that's where we should be looking at going.
Okay. Raymond, we are grateful. Thank you.
Raymond Akwa and MFA Apau there, looking at, having that outlook of Vision 2020 as it pertains to general well-being. Well, in 1995, the then government led by former President Jerryton Rawlings, under the auspices of the NDPC again, set goals to reduce infant and child mortality, general morbidity, and increase access to health services. Well, it's 3rd January. What is our current status? Have we been able to attain those objectives or even close the gap? What is the state of maternal mortality population? We're joined in the studio by Director for Hope for Future Generation, a non-governmental organization and a member of the Coalition of NGOs in Health, Cecilia Seno. So we have a quick chat about the health sector. Mrs. Seno, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
So let's start by taking an assessment, a general health assessment. We've seen what the Vision 2020 talks about. It talks about reducing child mortality. Of course, we have the MDGs as well, now the SDGs to help us measure our efforts. But what's your assessment of health care delivery generally?
In general, I think Ghana has made some progress, but I believe we still have a lot of things to do.
Definitely.
Looking at, you talk about child mortality. We still have children dying through malaria. Though malaria control program has made a lot of achievements through their community engagement, and also looking at the maternal mortality, we still have maternal mortality, especially at the hard to reach and then rural areas, even urban. Occasionally you hear of women dying through childbirth.
Yeah.
And I believe that the country really need to look at the issues on universal health coverage, which is the whole global discussion now, and also look at sustainability, adequate resources to health sector, because the health sector is very big. I mean, looking at where we are, it's at different levels.
Yeah.
And a lot of concentration has, over the years, has been on the national. I think focus should be on the district and the region.
Okay.
And then to be well empowered so that the people who are the beneficiaries will really take control and responsibility of keeping themselves healthy.
How do we do that? I mean, you are an NGO, you're into health. You've been at the grassroots, you've been in touch with these people. How do you suggest to government to get the message of healthcare delivery to the district?
Yeah.
And how can it be effective?
I think the country already has roadmap on CHIPS implementation. And also ensuring that resources, commodities like health commodities get to the grassroots. I know development partners have been supporting the implementation of the last mile district where commodities get to the grassroots. I think we need to equip the chiefs. I think it is there, but some of them are still really under resourced.
Okay.
And so the government should focus. I would suggest that a lot of focus should be at the grassroots, making sure that resources get to them on time. I know the drone is being used for emergencies, delivery of health commodities.
Have you had any direct interaction with have you had any direct experience with the drone delivery service?
I haven't, but I only see what is happening on TV.
Okay.
I've not had any direct discussion. Okay. But I still think that the country has to be more I think there is some proactive by implementation of our policies, especially the chief's policy has to be looked at. The partnership, we have to develop stronger partnership with private sector, because the private sector is at the lowest level. the CHAG, the Church Institute Health facilities are at very hard to reach areas. And I think we should not just say we are partnering, but we should resource and work with them so that they reach where the government cannot reach, and civil society. Yes.
So for you, there is a real potential in private sector as far as health delivery is concerned, and the government should, as much as possible, interact with this private sector in the health care delivery.
Yes, whether we like it or not. A number, I'm not sure of the percentage of people who access health facilities with the private sector. And I think the government should really look at that as a very big opportunity and resource the private sector, work with them where necessary, build their capacity, take care of certain things that they have to do to provide that quality health service to people, because people use them. You know, people access facilities to care for their health.
All right. Well, we'll leave that part of the conversation here, but it's still Vision 2020. We are in 2020. We'll come back with her perhaps next week, and then we'll take one after the other. There's some of the things that we expected to achieve in the Vision 2020 document, and then we'll do specifics as to whether or not we have achieved them and the way forward. Mrs. Seno, thank you so much for coming and for joining us in this discussion on Vision 2020. She is CEO of HFFG, Hope for Future Generations. It's an NGO. They're into healthcare, health services, and also a part of the coalition of NGOs in health. Thanks for coming once again.
Thank you.